there's more questions about Shentong, of course, many of them.
But
one is a little bit more specific, but since we're on it, we could ask it for Shentangpa. What is the object of meditation of a Bodhisattva Arya on the uninterrupted path of seeing, I think, is what they mean, and meditation? I'm not quite sure what that person is going for, but yeah.
Well, Buddha nature.
Yeah.
There's definitely, at that point, there's nothing else.
Nothing else but Buddha nature, yeah.
If you're meditating on anything else on the first bhumi, then you're not on the first bhumi.
Right. So maybe this next part is another part of that question. In terms of the union of emptiness and luminosity, is it that there should be no reification within that luminosity, or the realization that the luminosity is empty of inherent existence? Oh, that's bringing it back to the big question, I suppose.
Well, I think the big question here is whether those two options, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Like, what's the difference between not reifying and then not having or lacking real existence or intrinsic existence? That's, I mean, to me, that sounds pretty much the same, unless there's some subtle point I'm missing. But in the view of the third Karmapa and the so-called non-exclusivist Shentong, they try to combine the Rangtong and Shentong view in that, yes, the nature of the mind is not understood as just plain emptiness, because then you have a hard time, what about the qualities, Buddha qualities? But at the same time, if any of these qualities are made into anything, then that's not it. So, but I think one of the big confusions or problems with this whole debate about Rangtong and Shentong is that when you look at Dolpopa, how he came about, how these terms came about in his writing, he actually was not treating them on the same level of discourse, which means Rangtong for him is a philosophical system that works with logic and is on the conceptual level. Whereas Shentong is mostly on the experiential level. It's not based on reasoning or, nailing things down or something like that. So we're talking about two rather different things. Like, one thing is you talk about a philosophically defined whatever ultimate nature through inference and reasoning. That's still conceptual. And then you have the experience of what you have been talking about, but that's different. And then it's very hard to talk about the one with the terminology of the other. And I think that's one of the basic problems of this debate. Like, how can you talk about experience through logic? How can you refute experience through logic? It's very difficult. And from the Rangtong point of view, anything you say about your experience, once you say it, it can be refuted. So, but the actual experience, how are you going to refute that? That's very difficult.
But either in Rangtong or in Shentong, there would be philosophical expositions as well as sort of experiences in their way. So I don't know if this is going to be a clarification to that last question, whether that person is actually talking about a slightly more nuanced understanding, as in reification applying to all extremes in the Madhyamika terminology. So not reifying it as emptiness or non-emptiness or existence and non-existence and so forth. And then lack of inherent existence being much more sort of aligned to what the Gelugpa interpretation of emptiness is, of only eliminating the intrinsic nature of things and not going beyond existence, non-existence, and so forth. So if that were the sort of doubt that the person who asked the question has, then I would say that in Rangjung Dorji's case, he argues for non-reification in all sense, isn't it? Neither existence nor non-existence and so forth. It's not only about eliminating an intrinsic existence, but all extremes or all sort of reification and conceptual fabrication.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's also, I mean, of course, it's very hard to, you know, assess what the experience of a person is when they talk about these things. But that's why, at least the non-exclusive with Shantong say that no matter which one of those two paths you're taking, you should arrive at the same result. So, in other words, if you stripping the mind from all reification, you should arrive at the same experience as if you were doing meditation on a more Shantong-based presentation, if you understand it correctly, because you cannot arrive to Shantong on a reified idea of Buddha nature or something like that. If you do, then you have not understood the Shantong presentation. So, but again, there's a lot of debate. But to me, it makes sense if you combine, because the Rangtong view definitely is a kind of vaccination against thinking in whatever more or less subtle way of Buddha nature as being, some super self or something, or reification. And then the presentations on luminosity and the qualities, and that it's experiential, that is an antidote against just getting stuck in a conceptual refutational mode. So I think the two do go together if applied properly and skillfully.